Hello and welcome to this podcast hosted on behalf of the Enterprise Information Management Exchange. Joining me here today is Robert Shaw, Professor of Marketing Metrics at Cass Business School, who will be speaking at the event about I2D, the Ideas to Demand Framework. Robert, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
So Robert, you are internationally renowned as a leading authority on customer relationship management and one of the world's top business gurus. Please tell us more about your background and how you became such a well-recognised management thinker and writer.
Well, after I'd completed a doctorate in nuclear physics, I started looking around for jobs that would apply my maths and my computing skills. And by chance, I happened on a series of jobs in the marketing area. Many of these involved building very large-scale customer databases, and it turned out these were some of the first big customer databases anywhere in the world. Short time after I'd done this, I started getting phone calls from people in the States and in Europe, and they wanted to come over and see what we'd done. I guess it was quite new stuff. We were doing things like customer lifetime value, contact strategies, and people who saw it started to say they'd never seen anything like it before and asked us to write about it. And in the end, I wrote a book called Database Marketing, which turned out to be a bestseller. After doing this for several years, I decided to cut loose and do something different, where I didn't have a corporate master to account for me all the time. So I set up my own consultancy, and that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years. It's involved looking at marketing processes, looking at the process of managing customers, understanding what software does, and finding out a lot about how people are actually using these technologies. It's been a really exciting journey. It's taught me stuff that's amazing and fascinating, and I guess people who come across me and hear about my experiences learn a lot too.
So at IQPC's October EIM Exchange, you're going to be speaking on the latest information management processes that can accelerate customer insight and maximise economic value. So can you elaborate on the importance of this for today's businesses?
Yes, certainly. Customers are studied by businesses only because customers generate demand, and demand is the lifeblood of business. So studying customer information is useful because it generates insights about where demand comes from. However, today, with all these new social media, we're generating more and more customer information. Mountains and mountains, almost Himalaya ranges of customer information. And the danger is that we're going to get too much, whether it's from Twitter or Facebook or blogs or weblogs or search engines. We're getting masses of this data. And the danger is that it's not going to generate insights. So what I'm going to be talking about is how you can focus on the kinds of information that drive those insights and then drive understanding of where the demand really comes from.
And can you expand on where these insights come from?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the real insights come from linking customers to activities that drive their behaviour. So we've got to track the activities that drive customer behaviour as well as customer behaviour itself. Now, customers, when they're exposed to contacts, are touched by all kinds of things. Of course, there's Facebook and there'll be Twitter and so on, but there's also going to be television, there'll be posters, there'll be emails. And in order to understand where that one customer response that generates a sale comes from, you have to track all activities, not just individual ones. And the big challenge is to automate the capture of all the marketing activities in all channels that drives customer responses. And it's that automation that is the source of the real insights.
Now, Robert, you've frequently commented that traditional information management decelerates innovation and destroys customer value. Please tell us more about why that is.
Yes, well, the problem is that typically about only 10% of customer contact activity gets recorded. And even then, there's still a problem that although some of it may be on a database, very often a lot of it's on spreadsheets or even on Word documents. So we have a very incomplete picture of customer contact activity. Now, the consequence of this is that it distorts our calculation of return on investment. For instance, if we're only measuring, for instance, email activity, and yet that same customer was contacted in other ways, and those other ways aren't recorded, then the email gets all the benefits, yet some of the other costs have been overlooked. And this completely overstates the return on investment in this example for email. Now, people may also say, well, we shouldn't bother with the other media, and they'll say things like, well, TV isn't important because no one watches TV. Yet I can tell you from the research we've done that in fact all the channels still work in the certain circumstances. Certainly in some circumstances TV is very important, or outdoor, or press advertising. Now, people will also say you can't attribute this to individual customers, but this shouldn't be a problem because you can still gather the information and overlay it on the customer information that gives you good analyses and gives you much better return on investment models.
Now, you've been quoted as saying that very often board directors devote much more attention to spending and counting cash flow than wondering where it comes from and how it can be increased. So, how can companies enhance their information management processes and systems and challenge this trend?
Okay, well, the reality is that boards tend to be stuffed with finance people and people from supply chain, and there are very few marketing people on most boards. And they tend to have a very distorted view of where cash comes from and where demand comes from. On the supply side, supply chain people hate to have demand that's spiky and that oscillates because they worry that it's going to disturb their factories. Finance people worry about the cost of demand. They'd love it to be cheap, free even. So they're looking for cheap demand, and the supply people are looking for smooth demand. Now, the reality is that if you're trying to drive demand through customer contact strategy, it won't be free and it won't be smooth. But if you do it effectively and you pay attention to return on investment, you will get good demand that's worthwhile. The real challenge lies with information management. At the moment, because we're so deluged with detailed data, everyone's overwhelmed by it, whether it's from social media or whatever. And in particular, as I said earlier, the lack of activity data is a big, big problem because the finance people and the supply chain people don't realise that this activity is actually what's driving demand. So, as information management firms up its architecture and it starts to gather activity data by automating marketing processes, we'll get better and better evidence to influence the finance people and the supply chain people. And that's really what I'm going to be talking about in the talk at the conference.
And finally, just to round off, Robert, why have you chosen to get involved with the EIM Exchange, and what would you say can be gained by attending?
Well, the reason I got involved was that I've worked with IQPC before, and my experience is they're probably one of the best conference firms of this type that I've ever come across. In terms of what you can get out of the conference, well, first of all, I think it's a great opportunity to spread the word and enthuse yourself to really to wake up and shake up your information management. It's also a great opportunity for networking, and certainly you meet some of the top names in the area. And last and not least, it's usually stimulating and great fun.
Well, thank you, Robert. We'll have to end it on that, but I would like to thank you again for taking the time to talk to us today. We very much look forward to your presentation at the event. The Enterprise Information Management Exchange runs from the 11th to the 13th of October in London. For those of you who haven't already booked your place, there is still time to be part of the event. You can email us at enquiries@iqpc.co.uk or call our free phone line on 0800 652 2363. That's all we've got time for today. Thank you for watching.